The night sky hung heavy over New Hampshire, black and impenetrable as Robert Sterling's headlights carved a narrow path through the falling snow. His knuckles whitened against the leather steering wheel of his Bentley, tension building in his shoulders with each mile closer to home. 3 days away on business had been 3 days too many. Something felt wrong. The call from his housekeeper had been brief, her voice unnaturally tight. "Mr. Sterling, perhaps you should come home early." Robert adjusted the rearview mirror, catching his own reflection. At 55, his face carried the weathered confidence of success, but his eyes betrayed a deeper story. They held the haunted look of a man who had buried too much. The CEO of Sterling Technologies had everything money could buy, yet the gnawing emptiness in his chest reminded him of all he had lost. The first flicker of emergency lights reflected against the pristine snow sent a jolt through his body. Red and blue pulses growing stronger as he rounded the final curve toward Evergreen Estate. His foot pressed harder against the accelerator, heart thundering against his ribs as the full tableau came into view. Ambulance, police car, front gates wide open. Robert abandoned his car halfway up the driveway, lurching forward through ankle-deep snow. The world around him faded to a dull roar as he spotted the small figure being loaded into the back of the ambulance. "Sophie!" Her name tore from his throat, raw and primal. His 7-year-old daughter lay strapped to a stretcher, skin ashen against her dark hair, vomit staining the front of her nightgown. The paramedics moved with urgent precision, attaching monitors, inserting an IV. Robert lunged forward, shoving past a uniformed officer. "That's my daughter. What happened? Sophie!" The girl's eyelids fluttered at the sound of his voice. So small, too small against the clinical white of the stretcher. Her brown curls, so like her mother's, splayed across the pillow. "Sir, we need to get her to Northridge immediately," a paramedic informed him, voice clipped with professional urgency. "I'm coming with her." It wasn't a request. Catherine appeared in the doorway of their home, arms wrapped around herself, face contorted with what looked like concern. His wife of 3 years stood framed against the warm light of the foyer, perfect even in crisis. Her voice carried across the snow. "Robert, thank God you're home." She collapsed upstairs. "I found her on the bathroom floor." Something in her tone struck a discordant note, but Robert had already climbed into the ambulance, his focus entirely on the tiny hand he now clutched between his own. "Daddy's here, sweetheart. I'm right here." The ambulance doors slammed shut. Through the rear windows, he caught a final glimpse of Catherine standing motionless in the snow, watching as they pulled away. Something unreadable flickered across her perfect features. Inside the ambulance, Sophie's eyes opened slightly. Recognition dawned in her gaze, followed by fear. "Baby, what happened?" "You're going to be okay." Her lips trembled with effort, voice barely audible above the wail of the siren. The words that emerged froze the blood in his veins. "Mom put something in my milk." Robert stared at his daughter, the words hanging between them like poison. Before he could respond, her eyes rolled back, and alarms began to sound from the monitors. "She's crashing. Sir, you need to move back." The paramedics swarmed around Sophie, their movements a choreographed blur, as Robert pressed himself against the ambulance wall, his daughter's words echoing in his mind. "Mom put something in my milk." The perfect life he had constructed after so much loss suddenly fractured before his eyes, revealing the rot that had been growing beneath the surface all along. The emergency room at Northridge Hospital pulsed with cold efficiency. Robert paced the waiting area, each step weighted with dread. The detective assigned to the case approached, holding a sealed evidence bag containing a small glass with residue of milk. "Mr. Sterling, we need to ask you some questions about tonight. Who prepared this drink for your daughter?" The image of Catherine standing in their doorway flashed before him. The woman he had married after Elizabeth died. The woman who had promised to love Sophie as her own. "My wife, Catherine prepared it. She always does." Always. The word hung heavy between them. How many glasses of milk had Catherine prepared? How many nights had Sophie complained of feeling sick afterward? The realization that he hadn't been there enough to notice crashed over him like an icy wave. "Mr. Sterling," the detective continued, "the initial toxicology screening indicates elevated levels of benzodiazepines in Sophie's system. Do you or your wife take any prescription medications of this nature? No. The word emerged hollow, empty. No, neither of us. The snow outside the window fell heavier now, mirroring the cold dread settling in his stomach. 8 years ago, another snowy night had altered the course of his life forever. The memory swept over him unbidden. Vermont mountains. A business trip with Michael, his younger brother. The argument over whether to drive back in the worsening conditions. Come on, Rob. The storm isn't that bad. We can make it. Michael's voice so clear in his memory. Robert had insisted they leave. Had insisted they could beat the weather. He'd been wrong. The headlights coming toward them on the wrong side of the road. The desperate wrench of the steering wheel. The sickening sensation as their car left the road, tumbling down the embankment. Glass shattering. Metal screaming. Then silence. Robert had woken up in the hospital 3 days later. Michael had never been found. Presumed dead, his body lost in the frozen river that ran alongside the highway. The guilt had nearly destroyed him. Then Elizabeth, his rock, his salvation, diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer just months later. Sophie had been only 2 years old when her mother died. Robert had thrown himself into his work afterward, building his tech empire higher and higher, as if success might outpace his grief. And then Catherine had appeared in his life, the beautiful, poised art gallery owner who had seemed like a miracle, a second chance. Now he wondered if she had been something else entirely. Dr. Ferguson pushed through the double doors, clipboard in hand, expression grave. Mr. Sterling, we've stabilized Sophie. The levels of sedatives in her system were concerning, high enough to cause respiratory depression in a child her size. Will she recover completely? Yes, but Mr. Sterling, the doctor lowered his voice, this isn't the first time we've detected these substances in Sophie's system. There were traces in her last routine blood work 6 months ago, though at much lower levels. We attributed it to potential lab error at the time. The floor seemed to shift beneath Robert's feet. 6 months of slow poisoning. 6 months while he traveled for business, attended board meetings, and trusted his wife with his most precious treasure. There's someone from Child Protective Services who needs to speak with you, Ferguson added, gesturing toward a severe-looking woman in a gray pantsuit approaching from down the hall. Robert's phone vibrated in his pocket. Sarah Chen, his executive assistant for the last 15 years. Her text message added another layer of unreality to the nightmare unfolding around him. A man claiming to be your cousin is trying to meet with you. Says it's urgent. He knew your birth date and childhood address. Name, Michael Hayes. The name struck him like a physical blow. Michael, his brother's first name. Hayes, their mother's maiden name. Impossible. The social worker stood before him now, notebook poised. Mr. Sterling, I have some concerns about the home environment. These levels of sedatives suggest long-term exposure. Were you aware of any unusual behavior in your daughter? Excessive sleeping? Mood changes? Before he could formulate a response, a commanding voice cut through the sterile hospital air. Mr. Sterling won't be answering any questions without proper representation present. Martha Wilson strode down the corridor, her 65 years doing nothing to diminish her formidable presence. The family housekeeper carried a thick folder in her arms, her gray hair pulled back in its customary severe bun. Who are you? The social worker frowned. I've been the Sterling family housekeeper for 25 years. I helped raise Mr. Sterling himself, then his daughter. Martha's tone brooked no argument as she placed a protective hand on Robert's arm. And I have Sophie's complete medical records here, including documentation of her previous hospital visits. Martha turned to Robert, her voice dropping to a whisper. I've been watching her for weeks now. Something isn't right with that woman, sir. The social worker reluctantly agreed to postpone her interview, leaving Robert alone with Martha in the corridor outside Sophie's room. The older woman's eyes, usually warm with affection, now burned with conviction. Tell me everything, Martha. Sophie has been refusing to drink her milk for months now, but only when Mrs. Sterling prepares it. She drinks it fine from me. Martha pulled out her phone, swiping to a video. I installed a small camera in the kitchen 3 weeks ago, after the third time Sophie became ill following breakfast. The grainy footage showed Catherine at the kitchen counter, pouring milk into Sophie's favorite cup. Then glancing over her shoulder, she removed a small vial from her pocket and added several drops to the liquid. I should have come to you sooner, Martha's voice cracked with emotion. But I needed proof. I was afraid you wouldn't believe me. Robert stared at the damning evidence, his world collapsing further with each passing second. Why would she do this? I don't know, sir. But there's more. She's been locking the medicine cabinet, taking phone calls in the middle of the night, and twice now I've caught her going through your financial documents when you were away. A nurse appeared at the door to Sophie's room. She's asking for you, Mr. Sterling. Inside, Sophie looked impossibly small against the hospital bed. Her eyes brightened momentarily when she saw her father, then clouded with fear. Daddy, I don't want to go home. Please don't make me. Robert sat carefully on the edge of the bed, taking her tiny hand in his. Sophie, sweetheart, I need you to tell me the truth. Has Mom been putting things in your milk before? A single tear slid down her cheek. She says it helps me sleep better, but it makes me feel funny, scary funny, like I'm falling down a dark hole. How long has this been happening? A long time, since after Christmas. I tried to pour it out once, but she saw me. She got really mad, but not regular mad. Quiet mad. Those are scarier. Robert swallowed hard against the rage building in his throat. Sophie, I promise you, you are never going to be hurt again. I'm going to fix this. Sophie's eyes drifted towards sleep, the medication in her IV pulling her under. You promise? With everything I am. After she fell asleep, Robert stood by the window, watching the relentless snow blanket the hospital parking lot. He needed to return home, to confront Catherine, to gather evidence. His phone buzzed again with another message from Sarah. Michael Hayes insists on meeting tomorrow, says it concerns your wife, says he knows things about her past. The snow continued to fall, erasing the world outside. Robert made a decision. He would return home tonight, not to confront, but to investigate. Martha would stay with Sophie. Evergreen Estate loomed against the night sky, windows glowing amber against the swirling height. Robert parked away from the main entrance, using his key to enter through the side door. The house felt different now, its familiar luxury tainted by suspicion. He moved silently through the halls, listening for Catherine. The sound of her voice drifted from the study, tense and hushed. He's back early. Yes, they took her to Northridge. I don't know how much she told him. We need to accelerate the plan. Robert froze, pressing himself against the wall outside the study door. No, the documents are secure. He has no idea about the foundation transfers. But if he starts looking... A pause. I understand, I'll handle it. Just like before. Just like before. The words sent a chill down his spine. Catherine ended her call as Robert slipped away toward their bedroom. He needed evidence, something concrete beyond Martha's video. The medicine cabinet in their ensuite bathroom yielded nothing unusual. Catherine was too careful for that. He moved methodically through her belongings, searching drawers, checking behind framed photos. In the back of her vanity drawer, his fingers found a false bottom. Inside lay a small amber vial with no prescription label, half filled with clear liquid. Robert pocketed it carefully, continuing his search. Behind her collection of designer shoeboxes, he discovered a locked metal case. The combination eluded him, but he photographed it for later investigation. His phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. He opened it, heart stammering against his ribs as he read the message. Your brother didn't die in that crash. She knows everything. Meet me at Alpine Cafe, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Robert stared at the screen, possibilities exploding through his mind. Michael alive? After 8 years? It seemed impossible, and yet a kernel of hope burned in his chest. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Robert quickly replaced everything, positioning himself by the window as Catherine entered their bedroom. She paused in the doorway, surprise flickering across her perfect features before settling into concern. Robert, when did you get home? Why didn't you call me from the hospital? She rushed toward him, arms outstretched for an embrace he couldn't bear to accept. Robert stepped back, maintaining distance between them. The doctors are still running tests. Martha's staying with her tonight. Catherine's arms dropped to her sides, a flash of something, annoyance, anger, crossing her face before the mask of concern returned. What are they saying? Do they know what caused it? Not yet, Robert lied, watching her carefully. But they mentioned sedatives in her system. Any idea how those got there? The hesitation was brief but unmistakable. Sedatives? That's absurd. Perhaps they mixed up her blood work with another patient. Perhaps. Robert maintained a neutral expression, though fury boiled beneath the surface. I'm going to stay at the hospital tomorrow. Would you pack a bag for Sophie? Some clothes, her favorite stuffed rabbit? Of course. Should I come with you? The perfect wife, the perfect stepmother. No need. You have that charity luncheon tomorrow, remember? Sophie will understand. Relief, that's what flickered across her eyes. Relief that she wouldn't have to pretend at the hospital, surrounded by medical professionals. You're right, I shouldn't cancel at the last minute. It would look inconsiderate. Robert nodded, turning back toward the window. I think I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. I'm too wound up. Wouldn't want to disturb you. If you're sure. Her reflection in the window showed her watching him, calculating. Robert, she's going to be fine. Children are resilient. He didn't trust himself to respond. Morning arrived with clearer skies but no respite from the cold. Robert left before Catherine woke, driving directly to the Alpine Cafe. The quaint coffee shop sat nestled among snow-covered pines, nearly empty at this early hour. A man occupied the corner booth, face partially obscured by a newspaper. As Robert approached, he lowered the paper, revealing features so hauntingly familiar that Robert stopped mid-stride. The same sterling jawline, the same deep-set eyes, though now surrounded by fine lines. But different too, a jagged scar running along his right temple, disappearing into his hairline. Harder, more weathered than the brother he remembered. Michael? The name emerged as barely more than a whisper. The man gestured to the seat opposite. I go by Michael Hayes now. Have for 8 years. Robert sank into the booth, staring at the ghost across from him. How? We searched for weeks. They said the river. I was found downstream. No ID, severe head trauma. Michael's voice had a rough edge that was new. When I woke up, I didn't remember who I was. The hospital assigned me a caseworker, a nurse specializing in trauma patients. Catherine, Robert breathed, the pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. Michael nodded slowly, though I knew her as Nurse Hayes back then. She told me my name was Michael Hayes, that I had no family, no one looking for me. I had no reason to doubt her. Why are you here now? Why after 8 years? Fragments of memory started coming back last year. Nothing concrete, just feelings. Then I saw your picture in a business magazine. Something clicked. Michael leaned forward. But when I tried to find you, to confirm my suspicions, I received a warning. Anonymous. Telling me to stay away, that you thought I was dead and preferred it that way. That's a lie. I searched for you. I never stopped blaming myself. Robert's voice cracked with emotion. I believe you now. But Robert, there's more. Michael slid a folder across the table. Your wife isn't who she claims to be. Her real name is Elizabeth Harmon. She has a history of attaching herself to wealthy, vulnerable patients. Robert opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside lay newspaper clippings, hospital records, and a photograph that stopped his breath. Catherine, younger, hair differently styled, standing beside a hospital bed. In the bed lay Michael, unconscious, connected to machines. She kept me sedated longer than medically necessary, controlled my recovery, my information. By the time I was functional again, she had constructed an entire false history for me. Michael's eyes darkened with pain. She convinced me I had no one, that she was my salvation. And then she left you to pursue me. Robert felt physically ill. Once I started regaining independence, yes, I believe she saw a bigger opportunity with you. A widower with a successful company, a young daughter, the perfect vulnerable target. Robert closed the folder, his mind racing. She's been drugging Sophie, small doses, over time. Last night was the worst episode, enough to send her to the hospital. Michael's expression hardened. She's establishing a pattern, making Sophie appear chronically ill or unstable. I've seen this before in her past. It's about control and ultimately access to assets. I need to keep Sophie away from her. Robert gripped the edge of the table. But I need proof that will stand up in court. Otherwise, she could fight for custody, claim I'm the unstable one. I'll help you. Michael's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. I owe you that much, and the little girl, your daughter, she deserves to be safe. I need someone I can trust inside the house. Someone Catherine won't suspect. Robert studied his brother's face, seeing both the familiar and the stranger he had become. What are you suggesting? How would you feel about a position as the new security manager for Evergreen Estate? A plan began forming in Robert's mind. Michael Hayes, highly recommended, with impeccable references provided by my executive assistant. A ghost of a smile crossed Michael's face. I've gotten pretty good at being someone else these past 8 years. As they finalized the details of their plan, Robert's phone rang. Martha calling from the hospital. Sir, Sophie's awake and asking for you, and she's been drawing something she wants you to see. Robert arrived at the hospital 30 minutes later, heart lifting at the sight of Sophie sitting up in bed. Color returned to her cheeks. Martha sat beside her, helping organize a pile of crayons and paper. Daddy! Sophie's face lit up, arms reaching for him. Robert enveloped her in a careful hug, breathing in the scent of her hair, letting her solid presence anchor him in the storm of revelations. How are you feeling, sweetheart? Better. The doctor said I can have pudding for breakfast. She pulled back, suddenly serious. I made you something important. She handed him a drawing meticulously created with her crayons. A glass of milk with a large red X through it. Beside it, a woman's figure, drawn with a peculiar detail. Half her face colored sunny yellow, the other half deep black. That's Mom, Sophie whispered. She has two faces. Sometimes she looks nice but feels scary. The innocence and clarity of a child's perception cut through all pretense. Sophie had seen the truth about Catherine long before the adults around her room. Sophie, I need to ask you something very important, Robert said carefully. Would you feel safe coming home if Mom wasn't there? If it was just you and me and Martha, and maybe someone new to help keep us safe? Sophie considered this solemnly. Would she come back? No, sweetheart. She would never hurt you again. The relief in his daughter's eyes broke his heart anew. What had Sophie endured while he was building his empire, too absent to notice the danger within their home? There's going to be a new security person coming to stay with us, Robert explained. His name is Michael. He's going to help make sure we're all safe. Like a bodyguard? Sophie's eyes widened with interest. Something like that. Robert smiled. And Sophie, this is very important. We can't let Mom know that we suspect anything. Not until we have everything in place to make sure she can't hurt you anymore. Can you be brave for a little while longer? Sophie nodded, the determination in her small face reminding him painfully of Elizabeth. I can be brave. I've been practicing. That evening, Robert brought Sophie home, Martha hovering protectively nearby. Catherine greeted them in the foyer, the perfect picture of a concerned mother. She held out her arms to Sophie, who hesitated fractionally before allowing a brief hug. Oh, sweetheart, I was so worried. The doctors figured out what happened. I hope. Such a strange thing. Just a virus, apparently, Robert lied smoothly. But they want to follow up next week. Catherine's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Of course, whatever she needs. The charade continued through dinner, a tense affair where every word felt weighted with hidden meaning. Robert watched Catherine carefully, seeing her through new eyes. How had he missed the calculation behind her affection, the performance in her concern? Later that night, Robert sat in his study, reviewing the security footage Martha had secretly captured over the past weeks. Multiple instances of Catherine adding something to Sophie's food or drink, always when she thought no one was watching. His phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. Michael Hayes starts tomorrow. All background documents prepared. Also found something interesting in the Foundation financial records. Large transfers to a Swiss account. Need your authorization to investigate further. The web of Catherine's deception spread wider with each passing hour. Robert closed his laptop, moving to the window. Outside, fresh snow had begun to fall, covering yesterday's footprints, creating a clean canvas. Tomorrow would bring Michael back into their lives, the first step toward exposing the truth. In the guest bedroom where he now slept, Robert pulled out an old family album. He turned to a photograph taken 15 years ago, himself and Michael at their parents' anniversary celebration. Two brothers, smiling, arms around each other's shoulders, unaware of how fate would tear them apart. He traced the image with his finger, then closed the album with new resolve. Catherine had stolen 8 years from them. She had endangered Sophie, the one person Robert had sworn to protect after losing Elizabeth. The one person he had ultimately failed by his absence. Never again, he whispered to the silent room. The snow continued to fall outside, blanketing Evergreen Estate in pristine white, nature's deception hiding what lay beneath. But unlike the snow, the truth couldn't be buried forever. It would surface, one way or another. And when it did, Catherine would discover exactly what happened when she threatened a Sterling. The morning sun glinted off fresh snow blanketing Evergreen Estate, casting a deceptive tranquility over the grounds. Robert Sterling stood at his study window, watching as a black Audi approached the main gate. His brother, a ghost returned from the dead, had arrived. Behind him, the grandfather clock ticked with merciless precision, marking off the seconds until their plan would begin. 3 days had passed since Sophie's hospitalization. 3 days of maintaining a facade of normalcy while Catherine moved through their home, unaware that her mask had slipped. The security cameras Robert had installed throughout the house fed directly to the monitors on his desk. 4 screens displaying different angles of their lives: kitchen, main hallway, Sophie's bedroom door, the medication cabinet in the master bathroom. The 5th screen remained dark. The hidden camera in Catherine's private study was scheduled to activate remotely once Michael was in position. The intercom buzzed. Martha's voice came through with practiced formality. "Mr. Sterling, the new security consultant has arrived for his appointment. Send him in, please." Catherine appeared in the kitchen monitor, head tilting with curiosity at the announcement. Robert watched her smooth her hair, adjust her cashmere sweater. Always performative, always calculating her appearance. The study door opened and Michael stepped inside. Though they had met at the foyer, seeing his brother standing in his home, alive, breathing, sent a fresh wave of disbelief through Robert. 8 years of grief suddenly collided with the present moment. "Mr. Hayes," Robert extended his hand formally, aware of the cameras, aware that Catherine might be listening. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." Michael's grip was firm, his eyes communicating volumes beyond his professional response. "After what happened with your daughter, I understand your urgency, Mr. Sterling." Catherine's voice interrupted from the doorway. "Darling, who's this?" She stood framed in the entrance, the perfect vision of a wealthy man's wife, elegant in her simplicity, wedding ring catching the light. Robert watched her eyes scan Michael with practiced casualness, searching for any threat to her carefully constructed world. "Catherine, this is Michael Hayes. Given recent events, I've hired him to upgrade our security systems and protocols." Robert gestured between them with deliberate politeness. "Michael, my wife Catherine." Catherine stepped forward, hand extended. "Lovely to meet you. We've been so worried since Sophie's episode. I'm grateful Robert is taking extra precautions." If she recognized Michael as the patient she had manipulated years ago, her face revealed nothing. But Robert, watching her with new awareness, caught the momentary tightening around her eyes, the slight hesitation before her practiced smile appeared. Michael shook her hand briefly. "Mrs. Sterling." Just 2 words, yet Robert heard the undercurrent of tension, the controlled fury beneath Michael's professional veneer. Catherine's gaze lingered on Michael's face, particularly the scar along his temple. "Have we met before, Mr. Hayes? Something seems familiar." "I doubt it," Michael replied evenly. "I've been working private security on the West Coast until recently." "Must be one of those faces, then." Catherine turned to Robert with practiced concern. "Darling, don't forget Sophie's follow-up appointment this afternoon. Do you want me to take her?" "Martha and I will handle it. You have your foundation meeting, remember?" The smallest flash of relief crossed her features. "Of course, I should prepare for that." After Catherine left, the brothers exchanged glances. Michael spoke first, voice lowered. "She doesn't recognize me, not consciously at least. Or she's hiding it well." Robert gestured to the security monitors. "We need evidence admissible in court. Concrete proof of what she's doing to Sophie, her financial manipulations, her past." "Where is Sophie now?" "With Martha in the sunroom. She's been drawing constantly since the hospital, processing in her own way." Robert's voice caught. "She doesn't trust her own home anymore." Michael's expression darkened. No child should feel that way. I've called a meeting, the people we can trust. Robert checked his watch. They'll arrive separately through the east gate to avoid Catherine's attention. The security center, a converted guest suite in the east wing, was ready 30 minutes later. Sarah Chen arrived first, her usual efficient self despite the unusual circumstances. At 48, Robert's executive assistant had been with him through the building of his company, Elizabeth's death, and the aftermath. Her loyalty was absolute. Rebecca Miles arrived next, elegant and formidable in her tailored suit. As Elizabeth's oldest friend and one of Boston's top divorce attorneys, she brought both personal investment and professional expertise to their cause. Last came Dr. Abigail Turner, Sophie's pediatrician since birth, who had agreed to review the medical evidence independently. Robert stood before the assembled group, the weight of leadership settling familiarly on his shoulders. This wasn't a boardroom, but the stakes were infinitely higher than any corporate takeover. Thank you all for coming. What I'm about to share will sound incredible, but I need you to reserve judgment until you've seen all the evidence. He began methodically, presenting Martha's video footage of Catherine adding substances to Sophie's food, the hospital toxicology reports, the financial discrepancies Sarah had uncovered in the foundation accounts. Then came the revelation that stunned even those prepared for the worst. This is Michael Sterling, my brother, previously presumed dead. Robert gestured to Michael, who stood silently by the window. Catherine, whose real name we've discovered is Elizabeth Harmon, was his nurse after the accident. She manipulated his traumatic amnesia, created a false identity for him, and then abandoned him when she saw a more lucrative opportunity with me. Rebecca Miles recovered first. My God, Robert, this is beyond a simple divorce case. We're looking at attempted murder, financial fraud, identity theft, and a history of similar behavior, Sarah added, opening her laptop to display her findings. I've been investigating Elizabeth Harmon for the past 72 hours. There's a pattern. The screen showed 3 different men, all wealthy, all vulnerable through recent loss or tragedy, all connected to Elizabeth Harmon under various aliases. 2 deceased under suspicious circumstances after changing their wills. 1 survived but lost millions. And all had health issues that began after she entered their lives. Dr. Turner studied the medical reports with growing concern. These sedative levels in Sophie's system, they've been increasing gradually, building tolerance. If the pattern continued, she didn't need to finish the thought. So what's our plan? Rebecca asked, the attorney in her focusing on strategy. Robert laid out the operation with military precision. Sarah continues following the money trail. Michael establishes himself here, gaining Catherine's trust while gathering evidence. Martha protects Sophie. Dr. Turner documents Sophie's recovery now that she's not being drugged. Rebecca prepares the legal framework for both criminal charges and divorce proceedings. And you? Michael asked quietly. I maintain the illusion of normalcy. Make Catherine believe she still has me fooled. Robert's jaw tightened, all while ensuring Sophie is never alone with her again. Sarah looked up from her computer, expression grim. There's something else you need to see. Catherine's real background. She turned her laptop to display police reports and juvenile records. Elizabeth Harmon grew up in the foster system, multiple placements, reports of manipulation, theft, violence toward other children, psychiatric evaluations suggesting sociopathic tendencies. The room fell silent as they absorbed this new information. She sees people as stepping stones, Michael said finally, tools to be used and discarded. But why Sophie? Martha asked, the question hanging heavy in the room. If her goal is Robert's money, why harm the child? Turner closed the medical file. Control. By making Sophie chronically ill, she ensures dependence, isolates her from her father, potentially positions herself as the primary caregiver. In cases of contested divorce, that can be leveraged for significant financial settlements. There's more, Sarah continued. Elizabeth Harmon has no formal nursing credentials. She forged her qualifications at St. Clair Hospital. Her knowledge of medications comes from working as a pharmacy assistant under yet another name. Robert felt the ground shifting beneath him. The woman he had married, who had shared his bed, his home, his life with Sophie, was a complete fabrication. We move carefully, he said at last. We gather evidence methodically. One mistake and she'll disappear with millions, or worse, try to take Sophie. The meeting concluded with assignments distributed. As the others departed, Michael remained behind, studying the surveillance monitors. "She's in the garden," he observed, on her phone again. Robert watched Catherine pace the snow-covered path, phone pressed to her ear, free hand gesticulating emphatically. Even from this distance, her agitation was evident. "I've tapped her personal phone," Robert said, "but she's using burners for important calls, switching them regularly." "Professional behavior," Michael noted. "She's not working alone." The pieces continued to assemble into an increasingly disturbing picture. Catherine wasn't merely an opportunistic con artist. She was part of something larger, more organized, more dangerous. 2 days later, Sarah arrived at Evergreen Estate with findings that confirmed their worst suspicions. "The financial trail leads to a shell company called Chimera Investments," she explained, spreading documents across Robert's desk. "It's registered to a Dr. Lawrence Peterson." "The name sounds familiar," Robert foreboded. "It should. He's listed as Sophie's consulting physician on 3 emergency room visits last year. Visits that coincided with your business trips to Europe." Robert felt physically ill. He diagnosed her with various conditions, recommended specialists, medications, all while working with Catherine. Sarah pointed to the transaction records. $3 million have moved from your foundation through Chimera Investments, then offshore to accounts in the Cayman Islands. And Peterson? Former physician, license suspended for prescription fraud 5 years ago. Now mysteriously living well beyond his means in a Beacon Hill townhouse. The web extended further than they had imagined. Catherine had embedded herself deeply in their lives, creating a network of enablers and accomplices around Sophie's fictitious health issues. That evening, Robert watched from his study window as Michael spent time with Sophie in the snow-covered garden. His daughter had initially been shy around the newcomer, but Michael's gentle patience had gradually won her trust. Now they were building a snow fort together, Sophie's laughter carrying through the frosty air. It was the first time Robert had heard her laugh so freely in months. Catherine appeared on the terrace, watching them with an unreadable expression. Robert tensed, but she merely called out an offer of hot chocolate before disappearing back inside. Later, the security monitor captured Catherine in the kitchen, preparing 3 mugs with meticulous care. Robert watched her hesitate before the refrigerator, glancing over her shoulder, then reaching into her pocket instead of using the milk carton. "Martha," he called through the intercom. "Kitchen intercept." Within 30 seconds, Martha appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Oh, hot chocolate? Let me help with that, Mrs. Sterling." Catherine's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "No need, Martha. I've got it handled." "I insist. You know how particular Sophie is about her marshmallows." Martha moved efficiently beside Catherine, subtly positioning herself between the mugs and the door. "Why don't you take one out to Mr. Hayes? I'll bring Sophie's after adding her marshmallows." Catherine hesitated, then relented, taking only 1 mug, presumably the untainted one, out to the garden. Robert watched the monitor as Martha quickly switched Catherine's and Sophie's mugs, ensuring his daughter would receive the safe beverage. The choreography of protection they had established functioned perfectly. On the garden monitor, Catherine approached Michael, offering him the hot chocolate with a carefully constructed smile. The audio picked up their conversation. "You're good with children," Catherine remarked, watching as Sophie continued working on the snow fort. "I had a niece about her age once," Michael replied, accepting the mug without drinking. "She loved building things too." "Had?" Catherine's interest seemed casual, but Robert recognized the probing beneath. "She died with her father. Car accident." Michael's gaze remained on Sophie rather than Catherine. "Some losses you never fully recover from." Catherine touched his arm sympathetically. "I'm so sorry. That explains why you're so protective of Sophie. You see her as a second chance." Michael finally looked at Catherine directly. "Some things can't be replaced, Mrs. Sterling, but every child deserves protection." The layered meaning in his words caused Catherine's expression to falter momentarily. She recovered quickly, but the camera had captured her reaction. A flash of calculation, reassessment. That night, after Sophie was asleep under Martha's watchful eye, Michael reported a disturbing development. "She's testing me," he said, pacing Robert's study, dropping hints, watching my reactions. "She's trying to determine if I remember her." "What triggered this?" The niece comment, I mentioned losing family in a car accident. She's fishing for inconsistencies in my cover story. Robert rubbed his temples. We knew this might happen. She's skilled at manipulation, reading people. There's something else. Michael stopped pacing. I found this in my room. He placed a small wooden puzzle box on the desk. Handcrafted, expensive. A gift? Robert asked. An old gift. Michael's voice tightened. I've seen this before. She gave me the same puzzle box in the hospital 8 years ago. Said it would help my cognitive recovery. The implications sent a chill through the room. Catherine was sending Michael a message. I know who you are. She's accelerating her timeline, Robert concluded. She senses something's wrong. Their suspicions proved correct the following morning when Sarah called with alarming news. She's liquidating assets. 3 transfers from different accounts in the past 12 hours. Nearly $2 million moved to a Swiss bank. Robert made an immediate decision. Freeze everything. Every account connected to the foundation. All our joint personal accounts. Already done. But Robert, there's more. She's been searching for information on Sophie's trust fund, the one Elizabeth established before she died. The trust fund was substantial, designed to secure Sophie's future regardless of what happened to Robert. If Catherine gained control of Sophie through allegations of Robert's unfitness as a parent, she could potentially access those funds as guardian. The noose was tightening. They needed to gather their evidence quickly before Catherine made her next move. That afternoon, Michael experienced a breakthrough. While helping Sophie organize her art supplies in the playroom, he found an old music box that triggered a flood of memories. The mechanical melody unlocked fragments of his past. The hospital room, Catherine, Elizabeth, administering unnecessary sedatives, whispering to him while he was semi-conscious. Your brother doesn't want you found, Michael. He's moved on without you. I'm the only one who cares enough to stay. The manipulations had been constant, insidious, building dependency while eroding his sense of self and severing his connections to his past. Michael found Robert in his study, face ashen with the weight of recovered memory. She told me you were dead, he said without preamble. Every day for months, she reinforced it. Said you had died in the accident, that no one was looking for me, that I had no family left. Robert gripped his brother's shoulder, steadying him. I searched for you for months. The police, private investigators, search and rescue teams. I know that now. Michael's voice was raw. But when you're at your most vulnerable, with no memories to anchor you, the person controlling your reality shapes your truth. A soft sound at the doorway interrupted them. Sophie stood there, wide-eyed, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. Uncle Michael? She said tentatively, testing the word. The brothers froze. How much had she heard? How much did she understand? Sophie stepped into the room, moving directly to Michael. Your daddy's brother, from the pictures in the silver box. Robert knelt before his daughter. Sophie, sweetheart, this is complicated. No, it's not, Sophie interrupted with a child's clarity. He has the same eyes as you, and the same laugh. I knew he looked like someone. Michael knelt as well, meeting Sophie at eye level. You're very observant, Sophie. Did Mom make you forget too? She tries to make me forget things sometimes. With the special milk. Sophie's matter-of-fact description of her own drugging twisted like a knife in Robert's heart. Yes, Michael answered honestly, for a long time. But I'm remembering now. Sophie nodded solemnly. I helped Daddy remember Mom, my real mom. We look at pictures together. She turned to Robert. Is that why we had to pretend? Because we're helping Uncle Michael remember? Robert exchanged glances with Michael, then made a decision. Sophie deserves some version of the truth. Yes, sweetheart, and it's very important that we keep pretending for a little while longer. Can you do that? Can you keep this special secret? Sophie considered this seriously, then nodded. I'm good at secrets. The heartbreaking implications of that statement hung in the air after she left the room. We need to move faster, Michael said. She's been living a nightmare with that woman while thinking it was normal. 3 days later, their evidence collection was progressing steadily. Sarah had documented the financial fraud thoroughly. Martha had compiled a record of Catherine's suspicious behaviors and instances of Sophie's unexplained illnesses. Dr. Turner had analyzed Sophie's medical records, identifying patterns consistent with deliberate poisoning. What they still lacked was definitive proof tying Catherine directly to the drugging, proof that would stand up in court against the inevitable high-priced attorneys she would hire. The opportunity came unexpectedly. Catherine announced she needed to attend a weekend charity function in New York, requiring an overnight stay. With Catherine away, they could access her private study, the one room in the house she kept meticulously locked. Robert watched her departure from his office window, the sleek black Bentley disappearing down the snow-lined driveway. They waited 30 minutes to ensure she hadn't forgotten anything before Michael approached her study door with specialized tools. The lock yielded within minutes. Inside, Catherine's study presented the perfect image of a wealthy philanthropist's workspace, elegant, organized, with framed photographs of charity events prominently displayed. "Start with the filing cabinet," Robert directed. "I'll check the computer." Catherine's desktop yielded nothing suspicious. She was too careful for that. The filing cabinet contained only legitimate foundation documents, or at least documents that appeared legitimate on first inspection. "The safe," Michael said suddenly, moving toward a landscape painting on the far wall. "Classic hiding spot." Behind the painting, as expected, was a small wall safe. This lock proved more challenging, requiring 20 tense minutes before it finally opened. Inside lay the evidence they had been seeking. A leather-bound journal documented Catherine's calculated pursuit of Robert, including her discovery that Michael had survived the accident. Medical vials containing the same sedatives found in Sophie's system. Financial records showing the full extent of her theft from the foundation. Most damning of all, a USB drive containing video footage of Catherine and Dr. Peterson discussing Sophie's treatments and their plans to declare Robert an unfit parent. "This is everything we need," Robert breathed, carefully photographing each item before returning it exactly as they had found it. Just as they were preparing to leave, Sophie appeared in the doorway, face pale with fear. "Daddy, she's coming back. I saw her car from my window." Robert and Michael exchanged alarmed glances. They had minutes at most to exit the study and lock it again, with no signs of their intrusion. "Sophie, go to Martha right now," Robert instructed calmly. "Tell her code yellow, just like we practiced." Sophie nodded and disappeared down the hallway as the men hastily restored the room to its original state. Michael secured the safe and replaced the painting, while Robert ensured the files were exactly as they had found them. They had just locked the study door when Catherine's voice echoed from the main entryway. "Robert, are you home? I forgot the foundation portfolio for tomorrow's presentation." Robert stepped into the hall, composing his features into casual surprise. "I thought you were halfway to New York by now." Catherine smiled, though her eyes darted past him, scanning the hallway. "Silly me, rushing out without the most important documents." She moved toward her study door. "Have you seen Sophie? I wanted to say a proper goodbye." "She's with Martha in the East Wing. Art project." The lie came easily now. Necessary protection. Catherine unlocked her study, disappearing inside as Robert continued down the hallway with deliberate casualness. He heard her moving around, checking her safe, her files. If they had left any trace of their presence, she would know. Minutes later, Catherine emerged, portfolio in hand, expression unreadable. "Everything all right?" Robert asked. "Fine, just running behind now." She kissed his cheek briefly. "Don't wait up tomorrow night. These events always run late." After her departure, confirmed by the security gate camera, Robert, Michael, and Martha gathered in the secure room with Sophie. "That was close," Martha said, still visibly tense. "Too close," Robert agreed. "But we have what we need now. Rebecca will file emergency orders first thing Monday morning. By the time Catherine returns, she'll find the locks changed and police waiting." Sophie, sitting quietly beside Martha, suddenly spoke. "She was in the garden today, talking on her phone again." Robert knelt before his daughter. "Did you hear what she said?" Sophie nodded solemnly. "She said, 'We need to move now. The girl knows too much.'" Her voice trembled slightly. "She was talking about me, wasn't she?" The adults exchanged alarmed glances. If Catherine suspected Sophie was aware of her activities, the child represented a threat to her plans. "I think we need to move tonight," Michael said quietly. "Take Sophie somewhere safe until this is resolved." "The lake house," Robert decided. "It's isolated, secure, not connected to any of our official properties." Plans were made quickly. Martha would take Sophie to the lake house immediately, while Robert and Michael remained to coordinate with Rebecca and law enforcement. Better to have Sophie completely removed from Catherine's reach. As Martha led Sophie upstairs to pack an overnight bag, Robert's phone rang. The caller ID displayed Rebecca Miles. "We have a problem," she said without preamble. "Catherine filed emergency custody papers this afternoon. She's alleging you're having paranoid delusions, exhibiting erratic behavior, and posing a danger to Sophie." Robert felt the blood drain from his face. "On what grounds?" "She has sworn statements from Dr. Peterson and two foundation board members claiming you have been making wild accusations about her, installing excessive security measures, and displaying signs of psychological breakdown." "That's absurd." "It gets worse. She's requested a psychiatric evaluation." Judge Harmon granted the petition. "There's a hearing scheduled for Monday morning." Judge Harmon. The name triggered an alarm in Robert's mind. "Rebecca, look up the judge. Check for any connections to Lawrence Peterson or Chimera Investments." The sound of typing came through the phone. Then Rebecca's sharp intake of breath. "Harmon, not a common name. Could be coincidence, but nothing is coincidence with her." Robert's mind raced through implications. She's been planning this move for weeks, maybe months, setting the stage, gathering allies, building a narrative of my instability. "Robert, listen to me. If you take Sophie now with these allegations pending, it will look like parental kidnapping. It will confirm everything Catherine is claiming about your mental state." The trap was elegant in its simplicity. If Robert sent Sophie away, he proved Catherine's allegations. If he kept Sophie at home, he left her vulnerable to whatever Catherine had planned next. "What do we do?" he asked, strategic mind temporarily overwhelmed by parental fear. "Document everything. Prepare for Monday's hearing with overwhelming evidence. Most importantly, do not give Catherine any ammunition to support her claims. Appear completely rational and cooperative." After ending the call, Robert relayed the devastating development to Michael and Martha. "So we can't move Sophie," Martha concluded, distress evident in her usually composed features. "Not without playing directly into Catherine's hands." Robert paced the room, mind working furiously. She's trying to provoke exactly that reaction. Michael leaned against the window, watching the snow begin to fall again outside. "We need to turn her strategy against her. Make her believe her plan is working." "How?" Robert demanded. "Let her think you're unraveling. Give her the behavior she's expecting. The paranoid accusations, the emotional outbursts, but documented, controlled, part of our counter strategy." Understanding dawned in Robert's eyes. "If she believes I'm falling apart exactly as she planned, she'll get overconfident," Michael finished. "Make mistakes." A new plan formed, desperate but potentially effective. Robert would appear to spiral into exactly the kind of paranoid behavior Catherine had described to the court. Meanwhile, their team would accelerate gathering evidence and preparing for Monday's hearing. That evening, with Sophie safely asleep under Martha's watchful eye, Robert and Michael staged the first phase of their counterattack. A loud, seemingly drunken confrontation in Robert's study, easily overheard by the household staff Catherine had likely cultivated as informants. "You're poisoning my daughter," Robert shouted, voice carrying deliberately through the house. "Did you think I wouldn't figure it out?" Michael played his role perfectly, the voice of reason trying to calm an increasingly unstable man. "Robert, these accusations are serious. You need evidence before—" "I don't need evidence. I'm her father. I know what's happening in my own house." The performance continued for several minutes before Robert stormed out, slamming doors, creating exactly the scene Catherine's court filings had described. The following morning, Robert called Catherine in New York, voice carefully modulated to suggest a man barely holding himself together. "I need you to come home," he said, letting his voice break. "Something's wrong with me, Catherine. I'm seeing threats everywhere. I accused Michael of conspiring against me last night." Catherine's response was perfectly calibrated concern. "Darling, you're under tremendous strain after Sophie's health scare. I'll come home immediately." "No," Robert countered, following their script. "I'm fine now. I need sleep. Finish your event. I'll have Dr. Peterson come check on me." The mention of Peterson was the bait. Catherine paused briefly before responding. "That's a good idea. I've been worried about your stress levels for months now." After ending the call, Robert turned to Michael with grim satisfaction. She's coordinating with Peterson right now, accelerating whatever they had planned, which means we need our final evidence today, Michael concluded, before she returns tomorrow. Sarah arrived mid-morning with the last piece of their legal arsenal, bank records showing transactions between Judge Harmon and Chimera Investments. The connection was established, proving collusion in the judicial proceedings. By afternoon, Dr. Turner had completed her comprehensive analysis of Sophie's medical records, documenting the suspicious pattern of illnesses and unexplained symptoms that always occurred when Catherine was her primary caregiver. Rebecca prepared emergency motions based on their evidence, ready to file the moment courts opened Monday morning. Their case was solid, but timing would be critical. As evening approached, Robert sat with Sophie in her bedroom, reading her favorite story. His daughter curled against him, smaller and more vulnerable than her 7 years. "Daddy," she whispered after the story ended, "are the bad things almost over?" Robert kissed the top of her head, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair. "Almost, sweetheart, I promise. Is Uncle Michael staying with us forever now? Would you like that?" Sophie nodded against his chest. "He makes you smile again, like in the old pictures with real Mom." The simple observation pierced Robert's heart. Children saw truth where adults constructed elaborate facades. "Sophie, I need you to remember something very important. No matter what happens tomorrow or the next day, you are loved, more than anything in this world." "I know, Daddy." Her absolute certainty was the one pure thing in the twisted world Catherine had created around them. After Sophie fell asleep, Robert joined Michael in the security room, reviewing their final preparations. Every piece of evidence was backed up in multiple secure locations. Every legal document prepared for filing. Every contingency planned for. "She'll be desperate when she realizes she's exposed," Michael warned. "Desperate people are unpredictable." Robert nodded grimly. "That's why we need to be ready for anything." The security monitor showing the front gate suddenly activated. Headlights appeared through the falling snow, approaching the house. "She's back early," Robert tensed, checking the time. Nearly midnight, a full day before Catherine was expected to return. Michael moved quickly to the window, confirming the approaching vehicle. "Not alone. There's a second car behind hers." The brothers exchanged knowing glances. Catherine was making her move, earlier and more aggressively than they had anticipated. "Get Martha. Move Sophie to the panic room," Robert instructed, already reaching for his phone to alert Rebecca. As Michael disappeared down the hallway, Robert watched the security monitor as Catherine emerged from her car, snow swirling around her elegant figure. Behind her, a second figure approached, Dr. Lawrence Peterson, carrying what appeared to be a medical bag. The trap was sprung earlier than expected, but unlike Catherine's previous victims, the Sterling brothers were ready. Robert took a deep breath, preparing to confront the woman who had systematically destroyed lives, the woman who had nearly succeeded in taking everything from him. The final battle for Sophie's safety was about to begin, earlier and with higher stakes than they had planned. "Game on," he whispered to the empty room as Catherine's key turned in the front door lock. Snow fell in silent accusation against the midnight darkness as Catherine Sterling stepped into the foyer of Evergreen Estate, shaking crystalline flakes from her cashmere coat. Behind her, Dr. Lawrence Peterson entered with practiced confidence, medical bag clutched in his gloved hand. Their breath fogged the air, white clouds of conspiracy in the momentarily chilled entryway. From the shadows of the upper hallway, Robert watched their arrival, his phone gripped tightly in his hand, Rebecca's urgent voice still echoing in his ear. "Don't confront her directly. Record everything. We need her to incriminate herself." Catherine glanced up the sweeping staircase, eyes narrowing at the darkened corridor. "Robert, are you home, darling?" The performance continued, even now. The concern in her voice so perfectly modulated that once, not long ago, he would have believed it without question. "In the study?" Robert called, injecting a slight tremor into his voice. The charade of instability needed to continue a while longer. Catherine turned to Peterson, exchanging a meaningful look before both moved toward the study. Robert retreated silently down the back staircase, circling through the kitchen to activate the final surveillance protocols. Every room in Evergreen Estate was now recording, every word and gesture preserved as evidence. Michael's text message flashed on his screen. Sophie secure with Martha, panic room locked, standing by. Robert squared his shoulders, drawing a deep breath. The endgame had begun earlier than anticipated, but the pieces were in position. He returned to the study, finding Catherine and Peterson already comfortable, a tableau of concern arranged for his benefit. Robert, darling. Catherine rose as he entered, arms extended in practiced sympathy. I was so worried after your call. You sounded not yourself. I haven't been sleeping. He allowed his voice to crack, playing into the narrative she had created around him. The nightmares. Sophie in the hospital. I can't get the images out of my head. Doctor. Peterson stepped forward, the very picture of medical authority with his silver-streaked hair and carefully cultivated bedside manner. Mr. Sterling, your wife has been concerned about your mental health for some time. The stress of your daughter's recent health episodes, combined with the responsibilities of your position, it's not uncommon for men in high-pressure situations to experience breaks with reality. Robert sank into his leather chair, letting his hands tremble slightly. I've been saying crazy things, haven't I? Accusing people, installing cameras everywhere. Catherine exchanged a quick glance with Peterson, satisfaction flickering in her eyes before disappearing beneath concern. We just want to help you, Robert. Dr. Peterson thinks you might need some rest, a facility where you can truly recover. A facility? Robert looked up, allowing genuine alarm to show. You want to commit me? Just for observation, Peterson soothed, opening his medical bag. A short stay. Completely voluntary, of course. I've brought something to help you relax for the journey. The syringe he produced caught the lamplight, a gleaming needle filled with clear liquid. What is that? Robert asked, backing up slightly in his chair. Just a mild sedative, Peterson assured him, to help with your anxiety during transport. Catherine moved to Robert's side, hand gentle on his shoulder. It's for the best, darling. You haven't been yourself. The things you've been saying about me, about Sophie's care, these delusions are symptoms. Delusions, Robert repeated, watching Peterson prepare the injection. You mean like believing you have been drugging our daughter? Or stealing from the foundation? Or that you manipulated my amnesiac brother after his accident? Catherine's fingers tightened imperceptibly on his shoulder. You see, Lawrence? These paranoid fantasies are getting worse. Peterson approached with the syringe. This will help you think more clearly, Mr. Sterling. Robert stood suddenly, causing both of them to step back. Before we do this, I just need to know one thing. He turned to Catherine, meeting her eyes directly. Why Sophie? If it was my money you wanted, why hurt her? A calculation passed behind Catherine's eyes, whether to maintain the charade or abandon it. Finally, something shifted in her expression. The mask of concern transformed into cool assessment. Children are leverage, Robert. Sophie was making things complicated, asking too many questions, remembering too much. The medication kept her compliant, confused enough to be dismissed if she said anything problematic. Peterson glanced nervously at Catherine. Elizabeth, perhaps we should... Elizabeth? Robert interrupted, seizing the slip. Not Catherine? A slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. Very good, Robert. You've done some homework. Not enough, though. I know everything, Robert stated flatly. About Elizabeth Harmon, about the other men before me, about what you did to my brother. Catherine, Elizabeth, laughed softly. Do you? Then you know I never leave loose ends? She nodded to Peterson. Lawrence, proceed with the sedation. We have a limited window before the transport team arrives. Peterson advanced with the syringe. Robert backed away, maintaining distance between them. And after I'm safely institutionalized, what happens to Sophie? I'll raise her as my own, Catherine replied smoothly, the devoted stepmother caring for a child whose father suffered a tragic mental breakdown. The Sterling fortune will ensure she receives the best of everything. While you control it all as her guardian, Robert concluded, someone has to. You're clearly unfit. Catherine gestured impatiently to Peterson. Lawrence, now. The doctor lunged forward with the syringe. Robert dodged, but found himself cornered against the bookcase. Peterson advanced again, needle extended. This can be easy or difficult, Mr. Sterling. Your choice. I choose neither. Robert reached behind a row of books and pressed a hidden button. The study doors swung open. Michael stood in the entrance, recording everything on his phone. "Hello, Elizabeth," he said quietly. "It's been a long time." Catherine froze, color draining from her face as she stared at the man she had once manipulated through months of amnesia. Michael Hayes, what an unexpected surprise. "Sterling," Michael corrected. "Michael Sterling. I've remembered everything now." Peterson looked between them in confusion. "Elizabeth, who is this? You said there wouldn't be any complications." "A ghost from the past." Catherine recovered quickly, voice hardening. "And irrelevant to our current situation." "Not irrelevant," Robert countered. "Very relevant to the charges of identity manipulation, medical fraud, and attempted murder that will be filed against you tomorrow morning." Catherine's laugh held no humor. "Charges? Based on what evidence? The ravings of a man experiencing paranoid delusions? The confused memories of an amnesiac?" "Based on this." Robert activated his phone, displaying the security feed from Catherine's study, the safe being opened, the incriminating journal and medications visible inside, and the financial records Sarah uncovered, and the sworn statements from your previous victims' families, and Sophie's toxicology reports. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Catherine's expression. "You accessed my private study? My safe?" "While you were conveniently away in New York," Michael confirmed, "though we've suspected for weeks what was inside." Peterson began backing toward the door, clearly recognizing the shift in power. "I should go. This is between the two of you." "Stay where you are, Doctor," Michael commanded, blocking the exit. "The police are already on their way. Fleeing would only add charges." Catherine's composure cracked further. "Police, you're bluffing. You wouldn't risk a public scandal." "To protect Sophie, I'd risk everything." Robert's voice hardened with certainty. The sound of vehicles approaching outside drew everyone's attention. Headlights swept across the study windows, illuminating the falling snow. Not police cruisers, but two black SUVs with tinted windows. Catherine's expression shifted from uncertainty to triumph. "Ah, right on schedule." "What is this?" Robert demanded. "My insurance policy," Catherine replied smoothly. "Did you think I came alone with just Lawrence? The men outside work for an associate of mine. Very discreet, very efficient at resolving complicated situations." Robert and Michael exchanged glances, the unforeseen complication forcing a rapid recalculation of their strategy. "Sophie," Robert murmured, thoughts immediately turning to his daughter's safety. "Secure in the panic room with Martha," Michael reassured him quietly. Catherine caught the exchange, eyes narrowing. "Where is Sophie? What have you done with her?" "Protected her from you," Robert answered coldly. The front door opened downstairs, heavy footsteps marking the entrance of multiple people. Catherine smiled, confidence returning. "It seems we're at an impasse, Robert. You have evidence, I have resources. Sophie is the leverage we both want. This isn't a negotiation. Everything in life is a negotiation." Catherine moved toward the door, Peterson following nervously behind her. "My associates will find Sophie, regardless of where you've hidden her in this house. Then we'll discuss terms for everyone's continued well-being." Michael blocked their path. "You're not going anywhere." Catherine reached into her coat pocket, withdrawing a small pistol that she aimed steadily at Michael's chest. "Step aside." The revelation of the weapon changed the dynamic instantly. Robert tensed, calculating distances and angles. "Always so many contingencies," Catherine remarked, noting their reactions. "It's how I've survived this long. Now, where is Sophie?" "You would never hurt her," Robert said, testing the waters. "She's your meal ticket." "True, but you and your brother? Entirely expendable." Her smile turned predatory. "Tragic murder-suicide. Unstable father, recently reunited with long-lost brother. Family drama escalates to violence. I tried desperately to intervene, but too late to save either of you." The sound of men ascending the main staircase grew louder. Catherine gestured with the gun. "Now where is my stepdaughter?" "Right here." The small voice from the doorway drew everyone's attention. Sophie stood there in her nightgown, brown curls tousled from sleep, Martha conspicuously absent from her side. "Sophie!" Robert's heart nearly stopped. Go back. It's okay, Daddy, Sophie interrupted, her voice strangely calm for a 7-year-old facing such danger. I heard everything on the special phone Uncle Michael gave me. Catherine's expression softened artificially. Sophie, darling, you should be in bed. Come here to Mom. You're not my mom. Sophie stood her ground, voice steady. My real mom loved me. She didn't put medicine in my milk to make me sick. Of course I didn't, sweetheart. That's just one of Daddy's confused ideas. He's not well. Catherine lowered the gun slightly, extending her other hand toward Sophie. Come with me now. I'll keep you safe. Sophie shook her head. I pressed the special button. The police are really coming now. Catherine's face hardened. You're lying. No, Sophie replied simply. I'm being brave like Daddy taught me. The distant wail of sirens confirmed her claim, growing steadily louder. Catherine's composure fractured completely, panic replacing calculation. Lawrence, get the men up here now, she commanded. Peterson moved toward the doorway, only to collapse suddenly as Martha appeared behind him, the heavy serving tray in her hands making a satisfying sound against the back of his head. I believe the doctor needs a moment to rest, the housekeeper stated calmly, stepping over his unconscious form to stand protectively beside Sophie. Catherine swung the gun toward Martha and Sophie. Stay back. It's over, Elizabeth, Robert said quietly. The police are coming. Sophie is safe. There's nowhere for you to go. It's never over, Catherine hissed, desperation in her eyes. Not for me. I didn't claw my way out of nothing, create all of this, just to lose everything now. The sound of confusion erupted from downstairs, shouting, the crash of furniture. Catherine's hired men encountering unexpected resistance. That would be the security team I hired last week, Robert informed her. Former military, very efficient at handling complicated situations. Catherine's control dissolved completely. She aimed the gun directly at Robert, finger tightening on the trigger. You've destroyed everything. You did that yourself, Michael countered, shifting slightly to shield his brother. The gunshot was deafening in the confined space of the study, but it wasn't Catherine who had fired. Sarah Chen stood in the second doorway, her small service pistol held in a remarkably steady grip. Catherine staggered, the bullet having struck her shoulder. Her own weapon clattered to the floor. Executive assistant, former military police, Sarah explained calmly, keeping her weapon trained on Catherine. Mr. Sterling mentioned you might need additional persuasion to cooperate. The sirens reached a crescendo outside as police vehicles surrounded Evergreen Estate. Catherine sank to her knees, hand pressed against her bleeding shoulder, face contorted with hatred and disbelief. You think this is the end? She spat, blood seeping between her fingers. Men like you always underestimate women like me. This isn't over, Robert. Not by a long shot. Yes, Elizabeth, Robert replied, gathering Sophie into his arms and holding her tightly against his chest, feeling her small heart racing against his own. For you, it is. The aftermath unfolded like scenes from a surreal film. Police swarming the estate, evidence being cataloged, statements recorded. Catherine and Peterson in handcuffs, led through falling snow to waiting patrol cars. The hired men similarly detained, their loyalty extending only as far as their paychecks. Sophie remained glued to Robert's side throughout, refusing to be separated even as medical personnel attempted to check her for any injuries. Martha hovered nearby, fiercely protective, while Michael coordinated with the authorities. Dawn broke over Evergreen Estate, pale winter light revealing the chaos left in Catherine's wake. In Robert's study, Rebecca Miles sorted through case files, phone pressed to her ear as she navigated the legal labyrinth ahead. Judge Harmon has recused himself, claiming a previously undisclosed conflict of interest, she reported, covering the mouthpiece. Convenient way to avoid being charged as an accomplice. Will the charges stick? Robert asked, Sophie finally asleep against his chest after the night's trauma. Attempted murder, kidnapping conspiracy, identity fraud, financial crimes. Yes, they'll stick. Rebecca's confidence was absolute. The evidence is overwhelming, Robert. Multiple jurisdictions are already opening investigations into her previous victims' cases. Michael entered, fatigue etched across his features. Police found 3 more identities in her possession. Different names, documentation, backstories. She was prepared to vanish if necessary. And become someone else, Robert concluded. Again. She almost succeeded. Michael's gaze fell on Sophie's sleeping form. If not for her, the little girl had shown courage beyond her years, leaving the panic room against Martha's instructions after overhearing the confrontation through the security system. Her intervention had disrupted Catherine's carefully orchestrated plan just enough to change its outcome. The following days passed in a blur of legal proceedings, medical examinations, and security arrangements. Catherine remained in custody without bail, deemed a flight risk due to her multiple identities and offshore accounts. Dr. Peterson, facing his own substantial charges, began cooperating with authorities, providing further evidence of the conspiracy. Sophie underwent thorough medical evaluation, the toxicology results confirming what they had feared. Months of systematic exposure to sedatives and other medications, carefully administered to create symptoms without causing permanent damage. Turner's prognosis was cautiously optimistic. With proper care and support, Sophie would recover fully. Children are remarkably resilient, she assured Robert, especially when surrounded by love and stability. 2 weeks after Catherine's arrest, Robert sat in Rebecca's office, reviewing the stack of legal documents requiring his signature. Divorce filings, restraining orders, civil suits to recover the stolen foundation funds. The criminal trial won't begin for months, Rebecca warned. These cases are complex with multiple jurisdictions involved. Catherine, Elizabeth, has already hired high-profile defense attorneys. Using my money, Robert noted with irony, we're freezing those accounts, but legal fees were already transferred. Rebecca hesitated. You should prepare yourself, Robert. She'll try to paint you as the villain. Claim you were the abusive one, that she was protecting Sophie from you. Let her try. Robert signed the final document with decisive finality. We have the evidence. We have the truth. Truth doesn't always prevail in courtrooms, Rebecca cautioned. But in this case, I believe it will. That evening, Robert returned to Evergreen Estate for what would be one of their final nights there. The mansion's opulence, once a source of pride, now felt tainted by Catherine's presence. Too many shadows, too many compromised spaces. He found Michael and Sophie in the kitchen, attempting to bake cookies together. The domestic scene, flour dusting both their faces, laughter brightening the room, created an unexpected tightness in Robert's chest. "Daddy!" Sophie exclaimed, running to him with chocolate-smeared hands. "Uncle Michael doesn't know how to make cookies right." "In my defense," Michael protested, "I've spent the last 8 years eating hospital food and takeout." Robert lifted Sophie onto his hip, unconcerned about the chocolate now decorating his custom suit. "Then it's a good thing you have an excellent teacher." Later, after Sophie was tucked into bed with Martha standing guard nearby, the brothers retreated to the study. The room had been cleansed of the confrontation's evidence, but memories lingered in every corner. "I've been thinking about the estate," Robert said, gazing out at the snow-covered grounds. "I don't want to keep it." Michael nodded in understanding. "Too many ghosts. I want something new, for all of us." Robert turned to face his brother. "I've had an idea." He outlined his vision for the property, converting Evergreen Estate into a center for traumatized children, particularly those who had suffered manipulation and abuse. A place of healing and protection, staffed by professionals who could provide the support that such children desperately needed. Winter's Light Center, he concluded, a place where darkness gives way to healing. Michael studied him thoughtfully. "You're sure about this? It's a major undertaking." "I've spent years building technologies and accumulating wealth," Robert replied. "It's time I built something with true meaning." "Then I'm with you." Michael's commitment was absolute. Every step. The transformation began the following month. Architects, child psychologists, and security consultants all collaborated to redesign Evergreen Estate into a state-of-the-art residential treatment facility. The formal gardens gave way to therapeutic play spaces. The ostentatious ballroom became a multi-purpose activity center. Catherine's private study was demolished entirely, replaced by a sunny art therapy room. Meanwhile, Robert, Michael, and Sophie settled into a lakeside cabin 30 miles away. The modest 3-bedroom home offered something the mansion never had: genuine warmth. Martha joined them, unable to imagine being anywhere else after 25 years with the family. Sophie thrived in the simpler environment. Each day brought subtle improvements. Nightmares grew less frequent, appetite returned, spontaneous laughter emerged more readily. She formed an especially strong bond with Michael, the uncle who had returned from the dead, becoming her steadfast champion. 4 months after Catherine's arrest, the preliminary hearing finally arrived. Robert entered the courthouse flanked by his legal team, Michael and Martha following closely behind. Sophie remained at the cabin with Sarah, shielded from the media circus that had erupted around the case. The evidence presented was devastating. Financial records showing systematic theft, medical documentation of Sophie's drugging, Martha's video footage, Michael's testimony about his manipulation during amnesia, previous victims' families recounting similar patterns of behavior. Catherine sat at the defense table, immaculate in a conservative gray suit that conveyed appropriate solemnity. She maintained perfect composure throughout, betraying no emotion as her elaborate schemes were methodically exposed. Only once did her mask slip. When Robert took the stand and described finding Sophie semi-conscious that night, Catherine's eyes briefly flashed with something dark and possessive, a glimpse of the true person behind the performance. The judge ruled there was more than sufficient evidence to proceed to trial on all charges. Catherine was returned to custody, denied bail once again despite her attorney's vigorous objections. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed around Robert, shouting questions about Catherine's double life, Sophie's condition, the foundation's missing millions. Michael and Martha created a protective barrier as they moved toward the waiting car. "Mr. Sterling, did you suspect your wife was drugging your daughter?" "Mr. Sterling, comment on the allegations that Elizabeth Harmon has victims in 3 different states." "Mr. Sterling, how does it feel to discover your brother was alive all this time?" Robert paused at the car door, turning to face the assembled press. The questions continued to fly, microphones thrust toward him from all directions. "I will make only one statement today," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "My family has endured a private tragedy that has now become public spectacle. What matters now is not retribution, but healing. Not the past, but the future we create from it." He slid into the car beside Michael as the reporters pressed closer, hungry for more. "Well said," Michael commented as they pulled away from the curb, though the vultures seemed disappointed. "They want blood and scandal," Robert replied wearily. "I'm focused on something else entirely." That evening, he sat with Sophie on the cabin's small dock, their feet dangling above the lake's dark surface. The spring air held lingering winter crispness, stars emerging in the twilight sky above. "Daddy," Sophie began hesitantly, "is the bad lady going to jail forever?" Robert considered how to answer, wanting to be honest without burdening her. "The judges will decide that, but yes, I believe she'll be in jail for a very long time." Sophie nodded, absorbing this. "Was she always bad, even before she met us?" "I think," Robert chose his words carefully, "I think she had a very hard life when she was little. No one taught her the right way to love people, but that doesn't excuse the choices she made." "Could I turn bad like her, if bad things happened to me?" The question pierced Robert's heart. "No, sweetheart, you have something she never had." "What?" "People who love you truly for exactly who you are, not for what you can do for them." Sophie leaned against his side, considering this. "Like you and Uncle Michael and Martha. And your real mom," Robert added gently. "She loved you more than anything in this world." They sat in comfortable silence, watching bats swoop over the water in graceful arcs. The trauma remained, would always remain in some form, but moments like this reminded Robert that healing had begun. 1 year after Catherine's arrest, Winter's Light Center prepared for its official opening. The transformation of Evergreen Estate was complete, its imposing facade softened by thoughtful landscaping, its interior reconfigured into spaces designed for children's recovery. Robert stood on the sweeping front lawn, now dotted with flowering trees and comfortable seating areas. Michael beside him, Sophie holding both their hands as reporters and community leaders gathered for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. "Nervous?" Michael asked quietly. "Terrified," Robert admitted. "What if we've missed something? What if we can't actually help these children?" "We've assembled the best child psychologists, trauma specialists, and security experts in the country," Michael reminded him. "And more importantly, We understand what these kids have experienced in a way most people never could. Sophie tugged on Robert's hand. Daddy, it's time for your speech. Robert approached the podium, gazing out at the assembled crowd. Catherine's trial had concluded 3 months earlier with multiple convictions and a 40-year sentence without possibility of parole. Sir Peterson had received 15 years for his role in the conspiracy. The financial restitution process continued, but the legal chapter was largely closed. This gathering marked the beginning of something new. Welcome to Winter's Light Center, Robert began, his voice carrying across the attentive crowd. A year ago, this property was known as Evergreen Estate. It was my home, but never truly a sanctuary. Today, we transform a place once touched by darkness into a beacon of healing. He spoke briefly about the center's mission, providing specialized care for children who had experienced manipulation, medical abuse, and psychological trauma. The programs developed by leading experts, the security measures ensuring absolute safety. The most valuable lessons often emerge from our greatest suffering, he continued. We cannot erase what happened here, but we can create meaning from it. We cannot change the past, but we can build a better future. Sophie stepped forward then, right on cue, carrying a small pair of scissors nearly too big for her hands. Together, they cut the blue ribbon stretched across the center's entrance, officially opening the facility as cameras flashed and applause erupted. The first residents would arrive the following week, 6 children ranging from 5 to 12 years old, all survivors of various forms of abuse and manipulation. The waiting list already extended months into the future, a sobering reminder of how many children needed such specialized care. That evening, after the reporters had departed and the caterers had packed away the last of the reception food, Robert found Sophie in what had once been Catherine's study. The room was unrecognizable now. Walls painted sunny yellow, shelves filled with art supplies, windows open to welcome natural light. Sophie sat at a small table, carefully painting a wooden plaque. "What are you working on, sweetheart?" Robert asked, kneeling beside her. She turned the plaque to show him. In careful letters surrounded by painted flowers, she had written, "For Emily, where the light begins." "It's for my special tree," she explained, "the one Martha helped me plant yesterday." Emily, her real mother's name, the woman whose absence had created the vulnerability Catherine exploited, the woman whose love still lived in Sophie's heart. "It's beautiful," Robert said, voice thick with emotion. "She would love it." "Do you think the new children will feel safe here?" Sophie asked, returning to her painting. "I hope so. We've done everything we can to make it safe." Sophie nodded thoughtfully. "I can help them, you know. I understand about bad dreams and being scared." The simple offer, from a child still healing herself, embodied everything the center was meant to be. Trauma transformed into empathy, pain becoming purpose. "You already are helping, Sophie. More than you know." Later, Robert found Michael on the center's back terrace, looking out over the grounds where landscapers had replaced Catherine's formal gardens with natural play spaces and quiet reflection areas. "Remember when we were kids?" Michael asked as Robert joined him. "How we used to build snow forts behind Mom and Dad's house?" "You always insisted on making them bigger than they needed to be," Robert recalled, smiling at the memory. "And you always worried they'd collapse." Michael laughed softly. "Some things never change." "Some things shouldn't." Robert's gaze swept across the transformed property. "After Elizabeth died, I thought I'd lost everything that mattered. Then Catherine appeared, and I believed I'd found a second chance at happiness." "You did find it," Michael corrected him. "Just not where you expected." The center's main building glowed with warm light in the gathering dusk. Through one window, they could see Martha helping Sophie hang her artwork on a wall, the family they had pieced together from tragedy's fragments. "We should head back to the cabin," Robert said eventually. "Big day tomorrow." As they walked toward the parking area, snow began to fall, light, delicate flakes drifting down from a darkening sky. The first snow of the season arriving unusually early. Sophie darted out to meet them, face upturned to catch snowflakes on her eyelashes. "It's snowing, just like when we opened the center." "A good omen," Martha declared, following more sedately with Sophie's coat. They stood together for a moment, watching the snow begin to accumulate on the ground, covering the earth with pristine white. Nature's way of suggesting that even the most scarred landscapes could be made new again. The drive back to the lakeside cabin was quiet, Sophie dozing in the back seat beside Martha, exhausted from the day's excitement. Michael drove while Robert gazed out the passenger window at the snow-dusted forest passing by. I received a letter today, Michael said after several miles of companionable silence. From Elizabeth Harmon. Robert tensed. Catherine. Yes, her attorneys forwarded it. I wasn't going to mention it, but what did she want? Michael hesitated. To explain herself, to say she truly cared for me during my recovery, that not everything was manipulation. And you believe that? No. Michael's grip tightened on the steering wheel. People like her always rewrite history to cast themselves as misunderstood rather than malevolent. Did she mention Sophie? She enclosed a separate letter for her. I didn't open it. Robert stared at the falling snow, weighing the implications. Sophie doesn't need to hear from her. Not now, maybe not ever. I agree, but someday, when she's older, Sophie might have questions only Catherine can answer. The cabin appeared through the trees, windows glowing with welcoming light, home in a way Evergreen Estate had never been. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, Robert decided. For now, we focus on moving forward. The following morning, Robert woke before dawn, the cabin quiet around him. He moved silently to the kitchen, surprised to find Sophie already there, carefully pouring milk into 2 mugs of hot chocolate. She looked up as he entered, a shadow of old anxiety crossing her face. I made hot chocolate. By myself. The significance of this simple act, Sophie willingly preparing a milk-based drink, something that had been weaponized against her, was enormous. It looks perfect, Robert said, keeping his tone casual while his heart swelled with pride at her courage. This one's for you. She pushed a mug toward him, watching intently as he took the first sip. The chocolate was too sweet, slightly lukewarm, and absolutely perfect. Delicious, he declared truthfully. Best hot chocolate ever. Sophie beamed, taking a careful sip from her own mug, another milestone in her recovery. I used to be scared of milk, she stated matter-of-factly, but I'm not anymore. No, she shook her head decisively. Scared means you can't do things. Brave means you do them anyway, even when they're hard. That's exactly right. Robert marveled at his daughter's wisdom, hard-earned through experiences no child should endure. Outside the window, the world was transformed by overnight snowfall. Pristine white covered the landscape, erasing boundaries and imperfections. The lake had begun to freeze around its edges, thin sheets of ice extending like crystal fingers from the shoreline. Michael joined them minutes later, hair tousled from sleep, eyebrows raising at the sight of Sophie confidently drinking hot chocolate. Someone's been busy this morning, he observed, accepting the mug Sophie immediately prepared for him. I'm practicing being brave, she informed him seriously. Well, you're exceptionally good at it. Martha appeared last, tying her robe as she entered the kitchen. Goodness, a full house already? The sun's barely up. The 4 of them gathered around the small kitchen table, sipping hot chocolate as dawn broke over the snow-covered landscape outside. Not the family any of them had envisioned, but family nonetheless, forged through shared trauma, bound by something stronger than blood. 6 months later, Winter's Lyatt Center had reached full capacity, with 28 children in residence and a growing outpatient program serving dozens more. Robert divided his time between the center's operations and his corporate responsibilities, which had shifted significantly toward philanthropic ventures. Michael had discovered an unexpected talent for connecting with the center's most traumatized children, his own experience with manipulation and recovery giving him unique insight into their struggles. He now headed the residential program, working alongside child psychologists to develop specialized treatment protocols. Sophie, now 8, had become something of a mascot for the younger children, her resilience offering tangible proof that healing was possible. She still attended therapy sessions twice weekly, still occasionally woke from nightmares, but the shadows in her eyes had largely receded. On a bright autumn afternoon, Robert stood on the center's main lawn, watching Sophie lead a group of younger children in a game of her own invention. Their laughter carried across the grounds, a sound that never failed to ease the weight he carried. Martha approached, carrying a tray with coffee. They're making remarkable progress, she observed, nodding toward the playing children. Especially Lily. She's finally joining the group activities. Lily, age 6, had arrived 3 months earlier, having endured medical abuse similar to Sophie's. She had spent her first weeks at the center speaking to no one, hiding behind furniture, refusing to eat food she hadn't seen prepared. Now she ran alongside Sophie, face alight with genuine joy. "It helps to have a guide who understands the journey," Robert replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. Martha settled beside him on the bench. Sophie asked about her again this morning. No clarification was needed. Catherine, Elizabeth Harmon, remained a shadow presence in their lives despite her physical absence. What did she want to know? Whether bad people can change, become good. Martha's gaze remained on the playing children. "I told her some can, with help, and if they truly want to. But others remain exactly who they are, regardless of consequences." Robert nodded slowly. "And which do you believe Catherine is?" Martha considered this, her weathered face solemn. "Some people aren't wired for remorse, Mr. Sterling. They regret being caught, not what they did." The harsh assessment aligned with Robert's own conclusions. Catherine's letter to the parole board had described herself as a misunderstood victim of circumstance, despite overwhelming evidence of her calculated predation. Her appeals continued, each more desperate than the last, as she discovered that her manipulative charm held no power within the prison system. Michael joined them, clipboard in hand, having just concluded a therapy session with the center's newest arrival. "How's Jason settling in?" Robert asked. "Better than expected. Started opening up about his mother's boyfriend today." Michael's expression darkened briefly. What that man did to him. He left the sentence unfinished, unnecessary to detail horrors they both understood all too well. "Sometimes I wonder if we're making any difference," Robert admitted quietly. "For every child we help, how many more are still out there? Still trapped?" "We're making a difference for these children," Michael replied firmly. "Today, right now, and tomorrow for more. That has to be enough." Sophie broke away from the game, running toward them with flushed cheeks and bright eyes. "Dad! Uncle Michael, come play with us. We need grown-ups for the next part." Robert smiled, setting aside his coffee. How can we refuse such an invitation? As they joined the circle of children, Robert felt a profound sense of rightness settle over him. This was his true legacy, not the technology empire he had built, but this place of healing, these moments of reclaimed joy. The sun slanted low through autumn trees as the game continued, casting long shadows across the lawn. Once, such shadows had concealed danger. Now they were simply part of the natural rhythm of light and darkness, neither threatening nor ominous. Later, as twilight descended over Winter's Light Center, Robert sat in his office reviewing applications for the spring session. So many children needing specialized care, each file telling a story of trauma and resilience. A soft knock interrupted his concentration. Sophie stood in the doorway in her pajamas, Martha waiting discreetly in the hallway behind her. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" he asked, immediately concerned by her serious expression. Sophie approached his desk, placing a folded paper before him. "I made this for the new children, for when they first come here and are scared." Robert unfolded the paper, revealing a carefully drawn picture of Evergreen Estate, now Winter's Light Center, surrounded by protective figures. At the bottom, in Sophie's improving handwriting, "The light always finds a way through the dark." "It's beautiful," he said, genuinely moved. "I think it will help them very much." Sophie nodded, satisfied. "Martha says we need to go home now. It's past bedtime." "She's right, as always." Robert stood, gathering his things. "I just need to finish one more thing, then I'll meet you at the car." After Sophie and Martha departed, Robert added one final note to the center's operational manual. Sophie's artwork would be framed and presented to each new arrival, a message of hope from one survivor to another. Outside, the first snowflakes of winter began to fall, delicate crystalline patterns descending through the darkening sky. Robert paused at the window, watching their gentle arrival. Snow had once concealed treachery in his life, had been the backdrop to unimaginable betrayal. Now it symbolized something different, nature's reminder that even the darkest landscape could be transformed, made clean and new again. He switched off the office light and headed toward the exit, where Michael waited with car keys in hand. "Ready?" his brother asked. "Yes," Robert replied with absolute certainty. "Let's go home." They walked together through the gently falling snow, toward the car where Sophie and Martha waited, toward the cabin by the lake that had become their sanctuary, toward the future they had salvaged from tragedy's grasp. Behind them, Winter's Light Center stood as testament to what they had learned through their ordeal. That secrets buried in snow eventually surface, that healing emerges from the deepest wounds, and that light once found, it can never truly be extinguished again.